the healing power of plant foods. I call it that because there truly is healing power in plant foods. If you're here to just get healthier and reduce your risk of disease, you're in the right place. If you're here to possibly improve upon some issues you might have and even reverse disease, you're in the right place. And if you are just looking to get a little leaner and lose a little bit of weight, you're in the right place, because plant foods will help you to do that. And the more you eat them, the more benefit you get from them. And so that's what I encourage people to do, is just eat more. How often do you hear that when you're talking about your health and losing weight? Eat less, right? This is all about eating more. This is all about abundance. We need to eat more. More of these whole natural plant foods that nature has provided for us. They have the power to literally reverse disease. They have the power to fuel those healing mechanisms in your body. Your body's always striving for excellent health, and these foods fuel that system in your body that reverses disease, that helps you to stay thin, and all of those things that you're hoping for. So I hope you get a lot out of this class tonight. I'm excited to have you here. I've got a strong family history of all the Western diseases, and I've watched my family members over the years get heart disease and diabetes and cancer, and I decided 20 years ago that I was going to do everything that I could to avoid what many would say is my genetic predisposition. And I knew there was something inside of me that told me that that was not the case, that I could do something about it. And that has been proven. One of my favorite registered dietitians, Brenda Davis, and I've actually heard other people say this too, but she says genetics is the loaded gun, and it's diet and lifestyle that pull the trigger. So it's in our hands. We might have that genetic predisposition, but we can turn that on or turn that off depending on the types of foods that we eat. And these kind of foods will turn those disease genetics off, or down at least. So we've got a full menu tonight. I'm going to do a vegetable pot pie. And this pie has a whole wheat crust. And I know I always have at least one person or two people in my classes that's gluten sensitive. Is anybody that way here tonight? Kinda, yeah. I can, if you'd like, I have some rice, and that's another option that I do. It's not a pot pie, but I serve the creamy vegetables over rice, which is really good. It's a quick way to make this dish without having to roll out the dough and all that kind of stuff. So I do that a lot, actually. So I do have some cooked rice, and if you'd like me to leave some out for you, I can do that. And if there's anybody else, just let me know when we get serving, or when I get, putting the stuff in the pan. Make sure I leave enough out for whoever else may have that issue. We're also going to do a lentil soup, and we're going to do a greens dish. I usually do either a salad with a salad dressing or a cooked greens dish, because green leafy vegetables are the healthiest foods on the planet, and we need to eat lots and lots of them. So this is just another good way to get them in besides a salad. And we don't always have to eat our food raw. We can eat cooked foods as well. In fact, we're doing a lot of cooked tonight. And then we're going to do dessert, because I think dessert is a great part of a healthy diet. And your dessert recipe's on the back. Did you guys get handouts, get recipe handouts over there? And then I've got a new one for those who have been before. Who's been before? I'm only recognizing a few of you, so it's welcome to those who it's their first time. That's awesome. Those two, I've got a shopping list handout and a menu plan handout, which is a new handout that I haven't had before. So anyway, let's go ahead and get started. It's great to have new faces, and it's always great to see old friends as well. So I'm going to start off with an onion, like I do with everything I'm cooking. I'm going to get my burner going here. Oh shoot, that's my phone going off. And I'm gonna do, let's see, we're gonna start off with the lentil soup. I want to get that going. We're just gonna start off with an onion. And onions have strong organosulfur compounds. Those are the compounds that you're feeling when you cut that onion open and it's starting to affect your eyes. And you want to celebrate, because those are strong anti-cancer compounds. Population studies that eat the most onions. In fact, it was a European study involving 10 countries, and those people who ate the most onion had the least cancers of all types. Of course, raw is going to be better, but cooked is good as well. And if you can actually, after you chop it, if you can let it sit for a little bit and those compounds develop as it sits, that's a really good thing. And if you're not familiar with the Vidalia Chop Wizard, I highly recommend going to Bed Bath & Beyond and getting one. I don't get a penny from that sale. But it's my favorite kitchen tool next to my blender. And if you're chopping a lot of vegetables, which I hope you're all doing every day, you're going to love it. So I'm just going to dump that in the pan. Now that's kind of a small onion, so I'm going to go ahead and do a half of another one. I'm not using oil in the pan, and I'm going to talk about that in just a second. Thank you for asking. So I never use oil ever when I cook. Oil is 100% fat. It's 120 calories in 1 tablespoon of 100% fat. It's the highest calorie, lowest nutrient food that we consume, and it actually increases risk of heart disease, not decreases risk. The last time I saw an olive oil tree was pretty much never. It's not a natural food. The Mediterraneans are healthy because they eat a plant-based diet, not because they pour olive oil on their food. I need a wood spoon, and I'll just use this one right now. But you can get another one out. Dr. Caldwell Esselstyn at the Cleveland Clinic. He's the director of preventive cardiology at the Cleveland Clinic. He has a 98% success rate with his patients, and he gets these guys in that are like ready for bypass surgery. They've got 90% clogged arteries, and they can clean out those arteries with his program. It's a whole food plant-based diet, and he says no oil, absolutely no oil, because I've got it like medium high. This is a pretty good pan, which helps. And I just kind of keep stirring it, and it is going to start to turn a little bit brown on the bottom, but that's not a big deal. We're just going to add a little bit of water or broth or tamari or whatever kind of a liquid that you want, even like a tomato juice if it's going to be a tomato-based soup. But Dr. Caldwell Esselstyn, he's worked with researchers that have done the tests. They take people and they feed them different types of meals, and then they test their blood flow. And it shows significant decrease in blood flow within 4 hours, and it peaks about 4 hours after having a meal with olive oil in it. It slows your blood flow like 40%. We don't want our blood to be flowing 40% less. We want to keep that blood flow going good. Okay, to this pan, I'm going to go ahead and add 4 cloves. Let's see, we're doing our soup. I don't want to get my garlic all mixed up. 4 cloves of garlic. And I encourage you to not take my word for it. Don't go home and tell your family we're not using olive oil because April said. On my website, I've got 4 videos from 4 of the top leading experts in nutrition, plant-based nutrition, and they talk about the oil and why it's harmful to you. So I encourage you to go to my website. My website's on your handout, healthforlifecooking.com. And they talk about what it is. And one of the things, if you're here to lose weight, when you're eating a whole food that has fats in it, those fats are bound to the fibers, and part of those fats are moved out of your body. When you're eating free oils, what they call them, that oil is not bound by anything. It's going right into your body and right into your hips or your belly or wherever you don't want it. Okay, so it's starting to get a little bit brown on the bottom of this pan, so I'm going to go ahead and those are sugars that are starting to caramelize. And we like that. That adds flavor. So I'm just going to add a little bit of water. And this is going to be a soup, so I can add, whatever amount of water I want. But I try to keep the water in my soups really low, because the more water you have, if I was to fill this up with all the broth or water that I needed, it would take much longer to cook than if I had a smaller amount of water. That's what I want. I want it to cook quickly. So we're just going to add that. All right. And then we're going to add some sweet potato or yam, whichever you call it. But from what I understand, yams don't really grow in this country. All your sweet potatoes in the store are indeed sweet potatoes. So I'm just going to slice this because we are going to use the chopper on this. And I leave the skin on. There's valuable nutrients in the skin, valuable fiber in the skin. That's another great thing about all plant foods is they have fiber. Animals have bones to hold them up. Plants have fiber that holds them up. And that fiber feeds your gut, helps to lower cholesterol and blood pressure, helps remove fats and other compounds that we don't want out of our body, hormones. Fiber is necessary, extremely necessary. In fact, you know, the paleo diet is so popular. Back in Paleolithic times, researchers say they ate between 100 and 150 grams of fiber a day. We're lucky if we get about 20 grams of fiber as Americans. We need to be eating lots more. We only get like 30% of the fiber that we need. And this chopper is really great, but sometimes it sticks to the food.
How long do those last? Like a decade?
This thing?
Yeah.
You know what? They last really good. The trick is to just pound on it. Don't try to be easy on it because that puts more pressure. You just whack it. But that, you know, I had one, I don't know, probably not a decade, but they last pretty good. I mean, I've had this one, I don't know, 2 or 3 years probably.
If it breaks though, you can take it back to Bed Bath & Beyond if that's where you bought it, and they'll give you a replacement.
That's right. Vidalia Chop Wizard.
Like the
Can you get a close up there? Mr. TV man. So yeah, like the Vidalia onion. And
coupon, they're only $5.
yeah, if you get you a coupon, 15 bucks, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you get a coupon, you can get a little bit less. So we're going to go with a little bit more. And that orange color, the orange color, of course, is your carotenoid antioxidants. And when you hear the word antioxidant from now on, I want you to think anti-aging, because that's what antioxidants do. They protect your cells and keep you from aging. And we're all looking for the fountain of youth, right? There it is. We thought we had to go to Zimbabwe or wherever to find it. It's right here down at Harmon's. Lucky us that we live in such a day when we can get all these wonderful foods all year long. Okay. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and put in, let's see, I got to make sure I don't get my pot pie ingredients and my soup ingredients mixed up. We're going to do some red bell pepper. Okay, red bell pepper, super high in vitamin C. The only problem is when you cook it, you destroy a lot of that vitamin C, most of the vitamin C. I like to add the red bell pepper for flavor and for looks. I'm also going to add some carrots, about 3 or 4 carrots, and some celery, chopped, sliced celery. Let's see, let me make sure here. Actually, this is, wait a minute. Nope, this is for my soup. Just sliced carrots is going in the soup. All right, sweet potato, carrots, bell pepper. Okay, so now that we've got our vegetables in here, and this is all the vegetables, it's going in the soup, right? Oh, we're also, you know what? When I was doing this recipe, I realized this lentil soup is an old recipe that I did when I very first started to change my diet to a plant-based diet, and it didn't have any mushrooms in it. And since then, I've learned the value of mushrooms, and I put them pretty much in everything. So, and I forgot to add them to your recipe. So the lentil soup, I'm going to go ahead and put some mushrooms in this in the lentil soup. I'm going to put 2 cups of sliced mushrooms. Mushrooms are amazing foods that decrease risk of breast cancer and all your hormonal cancers. They also lower blood pressure and cholesterol at the same time. They feed your gut. One of the best ways to feed your gut, the microbiome, and build that up is to eat some mushrooms. Some studies out of China showed that just 1 button mushroom a day, women who consume that, just 1 button, 1 white button mushroom that you don't think has really any nutrients in, 64% less risk of breast cancer for women that get that mushroom in every day. You want to get them in every day. And lots of different kinds of mushrooms are out there. We want to get some good variety. I'm going to add just a little bit more water. So like I said, when I do soups, I like to go with less water because you can always add water at the end. One thing I hate to do is have the soup come off the stove and it's boiling hot and you can't even eat it. So the good thing about doing it this way, where you're just cooking it in a small amount of water, is it cooks quicker, and then when it comes off the stove, you can throw in some ice cubes. Have you ever done that to cool off your soup? And you're not diluting it any because you haven't put the full amount of water in there. So it's doing good that way. Okay, I'm just going to go ahead and put on the lid. I'm going to, there we go, and just let those vegetables come to a boil. And by the way, a good place to, you know what, I'm going to move this over. A good place that I get nutrition information from is a website called nutritionfacts.org. And it's Dr. Michael Greger. He has dedicated his life to getting the information out about nutrition because of what he saw happened with his grandmother, like, I don't know, 40 or 50 years ago. He saw his grandmother walk into the Predican Center, or get wheelchaired in to the Predican Center in California. Santa Rosa, California, I think is where it was. And she walked out like a couple weeks later. The doctors told her she was to go home and die because they couldn't do anything for her. So she went to this place, walked out a few weeks later, and lived another 30 years to see her grandson, who's this Dr. Greger, graduate from medical school. So because of the influence that she had on him, he became a doctor, and then he has now dedicated his life to get the information out about the research on nutrition. And he just puts the research out there just the way it comes out of the journals. Does a video, a little short 3 to 5 minute video clip every other day, sorry. And on whatever subject you want to know. So go to nutritionfacts.org and put in if you want to know about cancer, heart disease, diabetes, if you want to know what the best apple is, if you want to know what the best kind of green is, if you want to know what the best type of onion is, you can find out there. So he talks about everything. And by the way, he's going to be here November 4th doing a lecture, and I hope everybody can come because it's going to be awesome. And I'll have flyers on that in my future classes. Anyway, the reason I brought him up was because soups. He talks about this, they did 5 different ways of cooking, tested 5 different ways of cooking, and the nutrient loss in those 5 different ways. It was, steaming, sauteing, microwaving, boiling, pressure cooking, and they found out that the nutrient loss in those was very similar except for the soup. And all the nutrients in the food was all gone in the soup, but where do you think it went? Into the broth. So you're not losing anything. Okay, we're going to get the pot pie going here. Pot pie vegetables going. So we're going to do the same thing again with our onion. And you can switch up your onions. I just use the yellow onions just because they're always inexpensive. Actually, your red onions have more of those phytochemicals in them. And the reason we know that is by looking at it is because of the color. Those antioxidants and phytochemicals are the color in the food. So anything, if you're wondering what's healthier, purple cabbage or green cabbage? Which one's healthier? Purple cabbage. If you're wondering if cauliflower is healthier than broccoli, you know because broccoli's green and cauliflower is white. And then we're going to also put in some garlic. We're going to do a couple cloves of garlic. By the way, plant foods have about 64 times more antioxidants than animal foods. I'm just going to read you out some comparisons here. Iceberg lettuce is about 7 antioxidant units. Blueberries have over 800, and all berries are up really super high. Chicken has a whopping 4. Eggs have a whopping 5. So our plant foods are much higher in antioxidants. So that's one of the reasons we need to eat lots and lots of them. All right, I'm going to go ahead once again and add some water to this. Okay, this is not soup, so we want to be careful how much moisture we get in there. And then I'm going to go ahead and add the rest of my vegetables. We're going to do this time we're going to do our carrots and celery. About 4 stalks of celery and about 3 carrots. And I've increased the amounts on the pot pie stuff because I want to make sure we've got plenty for you guys. So I did like 1.5 times what your recipe says. And we're just going to let those cook for a bit. Let's see, we can get rid of that. Actually, let's get rid of that as well. And of course, we all know that carrots are good for the eyes, right? Because when you slice it and you can see, well, that's those carotenoid antioxidants that are so good. And by the way, plant foods contain many different beta carotene, alpha carotene, all kinds of carotenoid antioxidants, like in a carrot. When you take a beta carotene supplement, you might just be getting 1 or 2. And when you take that supplement, you're throwing your system off balance, because a carrot not only has beta carotene and all those carotenoid nutrients, it's got thousands of other nutrients that work together to create balance. And when we eat foods, we have perfect balance in our body. When we're taking vitamin pills, we're throwing that all out of balance. Much more important to get our nutrients from food, not from, in fact, certain nutrients, certain vitamins increase risk of disease, cancer especially, and foods decrease risk. By the way, I haven't introduced my helper tonight. This is Jan. How could I forget Jan?
I slice and dice and revision.
And serve. So grateful to have her help me, because this is a big job. Okay, we're just going to let those, broccoli cooks pretty quick, so we're just going to let those cook for just a little bit. Put in just a little bit more water. And there's, you gotta, when you're not cooking with oil, you gotta keep an eye on things. You can't leave it. That's a word to myself, because I often do, and I end up with a problem. But we'll just put the lid on right there, and we're gonna go back to our soup and check on it, see how things are going. And I think we'll test one of those sweet potatoes. I don't think. Oh, that's a good idea. Yeah, that is still not soft, so we'll just go ahead and let that. And once it starts boiling, I'll turn it down just a little bit. Yeah, so there's certain foods. In fact, carrots and celery are one of them. The more you cook it, the more nutrients you get out of it. So don't be afraid to cook it. In fact, cooked carrots are better than raw carrots, and we probably eat most of our carrots raw. Carrot sticks and celery, with hummus or whatever, some kind of dip. But yeah, it's better to cook them. Beets, same way. When you cook your beets, you're getting lots more nutrients than when you're eating raw beets. And I got that information from nutritionfacts.org. He does a video that talks about the different foods that increase in nutritional value when you cook them and those that decrease when you cook them. I heard one gal, what is her name? Barbara O'Neill. She's on YouTube if you're a YouTube person. It's my favorite TV station. She says that raw foods have what cooked foods don't, and cooked foods have what raw foods don't. So you need to get both, raw and cooked, because they're different. You're getting different things from them. Okay, let's move over to the best part of our meal, and that's dessert. I want to get these done and get them in the freezer so we can have them chilled just a little bit. So these I did in February to a previous class before Valentine's Day, and I just decided to go ahead and do them tonight. But they're a super rich, super decadent dessert, and I always tell people, make sure you've got lots of friends to share them with before you make them, and when you're going to make these, because if you're like me, they call you in the middle of the night. And even though everything in them is super healthy, they're still very high fat, very high calorie, very high in sugar. They're just not healthy to eat, a lot of them. So anyway. With that said, we'll go ahead and do them. I'm gonna start with a cup, or about 3/4 cup of almonds, and these are raw almonds. And nuts and seeds are super, super healthy for you, but they are put in a hard shell for a reason. If we were to sit down in front of the TV with this, we could easily, I know I could easily go through this. But if every one of them was cracked, I could probably still go through quite a few, but not nearly as many, because it takes a lot of work to crack an almond. I mean, there's a hard shell on that. So we're not going to be eating them like that if we couldn't go to the store and buy them like this. So just keep that in mind. Sorry, I'm ruining dessert for you. Gosh. Okay, and then I'm going to put in some walnuts. Walnuts have powerful anti-inflammatory properties. Studies show that people that eat half a walnut, they decrease the risk of dying from inflammatory issues like in half, with just a half a walnut a day. So again, we don't need very many of these things. Arginine. Walnuts are high in arginine, which keeps your blood vessels like elasticity, keeps them flexible. And let's see, okay, my favorite sweetener is dates. Dates are a whole food. I use them in pretty much all my dessert recipes. I might use maple syrup to get a little maple flavor. I might use molasses to get that in like spice cake cookies or something like that to get that molassesy flavor. But this is pretty much what I use for all my sweeteners. I do cakes, cookies, pies, all sweetened with dates. Again, whole food. I've taken the pit out, of course. Want to make sure they're pitted. And I get these at Costco. You can buy them in a tub, pretty decent price. And we're going to go with a little bit of vanilla. About a teaspoon, yes. And I'm going to go ahead and grind this up. And we want to grind it up until it begins to get sticky. So I'm just going to let this run, and I'll be checking on my other stuff here. And yes, you need a food processor to do this. I'm going to go ahead and throw in my broccoli into the pot pie ingredients. How many of you pull these off and throw them in the garbage, these little broccoli leaves that are on the stem? Most of you? Yeah? There's 10 times more sulforaphane in these. Dr. Gregory does a video about it. Don't throw those away. Eat them. And you guys know what sulforaphane is? It's that phytochemical that decreases risk of cancer. It increases your liver's ability to detoxify. It seeks out damaged cells in your body and actually tries to fix those cells, and if it can't fix it, it tags it, and the immune system sees it, comes along and destroys it and gets it out of your body. And that's the power in these foods. Cruciferous vegetables. Cruciferous vegetables are kale, collards. We're going to do kale tonight. Broccoli, arugula, watercress, Brussels sprouts, cabbage. All those cabbagey type vegetables have that power. Studies done on populations that increase their vegetable consumption by 20% show decreased risk of cancer by 20%. Those who increase cruciferous vegetables 20% get double the protection. They get a 40% reduction. Greens are great for the heart. They reduce risk of heart disease, and they help to lower your blood pressure. In fact, green leafy vegetables in particular, or green leafy vegetables, just not necessarily cruciferous. I'm going to add just a little bit more water to that and leave it again for a minute. Can't remember what I was saying. Okay. So, green leafies, yeah. I still can't remember what I was saying. That's okay. I'll remember. So we want to get this to where it's sticky, like that, so it holds together. When you squeeze it into a little ball. I love to do these at Christmas time, and I talk about this in my classes. I'll do a pie crust or I'll do some cookies, and I'll say, at Christmas time I make these truffles. Well, this is what I'm doing tonight. I'm making truffles. So you want to make sure they get sticky. And this is the base of a lot of different kind of truffles that I make. I make a Christmas truffle. I call it, it tastes like Christmas nut truffle because it tastes like Christmas. It's got the cinnamon and kind of your chai type spices. And then I do one that's got like pecans and dried pear and like a fruity one. And then I've done peppermint patties where I do it with carob powder actually. And the carob mixed with a little peppermint oil with the nuts, it brings out the chocolate flavor in it somehow. But you could use cocoa powder too. But anyway, I make these little patties and I put them in the freezer and they freeze. And it's like this pepperminty, freezy, and it tastes like a peppermint patty. So, so good. Anyway. But we're doing chocolate truffles tonight because it's Valentine's month. And so I'm putting 3 tablespoons of cocoa powder. Oh, my soup is looking good. Okay, still good. All right, so we want that nice and sticky. And then what we're going to do is, there's no spoons in here. Gotta find me a spoon. What we're going to do, I usually do like a teaspoon or actually a tablespoon, and just take it and roll it into a ball. Oh, there's some cookie scoops actually in that, down in that drawer. I don't know if there's one small enough. and then just roll it in a ball. And then I put it, like that, and I put it in the freezer. And we're going to put these in the freezer just so they get a little bit cold. They're not going to get as cold as I like them, but I like them to get a little cold. And that way they'll be hard. And what I've done too is I'll put it in a pan. It's a lot easier just to put them in a pan and then cut them. But I'll put them in a pan and freeze it. And then when you go to cut it, you can cut them in little, like, it looks like a Hershey bar kind of thing. And because it's frozen, it's like hard like a Hershey bar. So it's like a Hershey bar. Can you tell I like chocolate? I love chocolate. Okay, so you just take your spoon here, and I'm going to have Jan finish these up. Yeah, good idea. It looks like it might be getting pretty close. Okay, so I'll let you finish those up. Thank you. All right, I forgot to put my mushrooms in here. We're going to do some mushrooms in here because we got to get mushrooms in everything. So we got a couple cups of mushrooms, and these are chopped mushrooms that I chopped with the Vidalia. I chop everything with that chopper pretty much, unless I want stuff sliced. Some things I like sliced, just for the appearance, so I'll slice them. Another thing about green leafies, that's what I was going to talk about how they produce, green leafy vegetables produce nitric oxide. Nitric oxide is the most powerful blood vessel dilator. That means that our blood vessels open up. When we're going up a flight of stairs, we need to have our blood vessels open up to allow for more blood flow so that we're not huffing and puffing so much when we get to the top. And green vegetables help produce that nitric oxide. That nitric oxide comes out of what they call endothelial cells that line the inner line of our arteries. And they produce this nitric oxide that's so good for us. Well, what happens when we eat olive oil, it coats the inner lining of our arteries and shuts down that process, pretty much completely takes that process away, decreases that nitric oxide production. Another reason we don't want to put oil in our food. And that goes for coconut oil. I know there's a lot of hype about coconut oil, but it's just like everything else that there's a hype about, and then 5 years later they tell you it's bad. 30 years ago, coconut oil was bad. It's a palm oil. It's still bad. It's still like 96% saturated fat. All right. I'm going to go ahead and put in our seasonings. Let's see, make sure we get our pot pie seasonings. We've got some sage and thyme, which I've got right there. Love the smell of that. And we're also going to put in some parsley. We got a half a cup of chopped parsley. And we're going to just add a little bit more water. You can see I just kind of keep an eye on that moisture level. I want to make sure I'm not sticking. But you never, honestly, when we first got rid of the oil, and the reason that we did is I had started learning about Dr. Esselstyn and the work he had done with oils and things, and my husband and I went to a conference in Las Vegas. It was a health conference where he spoke, and my husband's cholesterol was like up to 260 something, and he had been eating my food, a plant-based diet, like 95% whole food plant-based diet for 10 years. We'd been married for 10 years, and his cholesterol was still that high. And I was using olive oil and Vegnaise and Earth Balance Buttery Spread and all these wonderful oil-based spreads. And we learned that those things are all bad. So we came home. He was the one that was like, let's try it. Let's just see if it'll help. 6 weeks later, 50-point drop in cholesterol when we got rid of that stuff and the oil and using oils. I was using olive oil to cook with. So we were pretty much convinced that that definitely played a role. All right, let's see, that's looking really good. I think it needs to be cooked a little bit longer though. We're gonna hold off on the peas. I like to not have to cook the peas too much. Oh, you were gonna have me try this. Oh, that's good. Nice and soft. Okay, to speed up the cooking of this soup, because the sweet potatoes take a little bit longer to cook than the carrots do, you could use a cooked sweet potato, and you would put that in like now, like when you put in your lentils, which is what we're going to do. Actually, we're going to go ahead and put in our tomatoes. So you could do a cooked sweet potato, just cut it up, and the sweet potato is going to be, of course, softer and might fall apart a little bit more, but that just makes it even better. as far as I'm concerned. So we're going to go ahead and put in, it calls for 1 can of diced tomatoes or pureed tomatoes. And I've discovered, I don't like buying tomatoes in a can, but you know, if that's all you can find or whatever, go ahead and buy them, they're still good for you. But I've discovered that I start tasting like, when you go through summer and you have your fresh tomatoes and you go buy a can of tomatoes, you can taste the can. I could, and I just didn't like that. So, and the can leaches into the tomatoes, especially, you know, the tomato products. Anyway, these are wonderful, and they've been on sale. Natural Grocers had them on sale. Harmon's had these on sale for like $2.99, which is quite a bit more than a large can of tomatoes, but they're so good. They're so yummy. So you might want to keep an eye on those. I just had opened that can for something else last night, so it was already opened, and I just transferred the rest into a bottle. But I wanted to bring that box so you could see what they are. And these are more of a pureed tomato, because that's just what they had. And I'm going to put in, there was a little bit more than that, so I'm just going to put all those in. And tomatoes have compounds that protect your skin from DNA damage from the sun. What time of the year do tomatoes grow? July and August, the hottest part when that sun is most intense. I find that interesting that nature provides those for us during a time of year when we need it. All right, okay, let's see. We got our tomatoes in there, and did I put seasonings in there? No, I did not. So we've got our seasonings for our lentil soup, and it's 2 teaspoons of cumin, 2 teaspoons of coriander, and let's see, is that right? No, that's not right. 2 teaspoons of cumin and a teaspoon of onion powder, and a 1/4 teaspoon of cayenne pepper, just for a little kick. And then we're going to put in our lentils. These lentils were cooked ahead of time. Now you can put them in your soup. You can put them in your soup and cook them. While you're cooking everything, it would just take a little bit longer for the soup to cook. One of the things about cooking this way, you know, people often complain, oh, it just takes so long, all that chopping and la la la, cooking your beans, and of course you can use canned beans. But the trick is to think ahead. So if I'm going to make this soup tonight for dinner, I'm in the morning, hopefully planning ahead, which like hardly ever happens, but trying to be a good example here. In the morning, I'm thinking, okay, what's for dinner? Oh, I want to do some lentil soup. Let me cook my lentils this morning, and that way they'll be done, and I can cook this soup a lot quicker. So I'll just put them on, boil some water, throw in my lentils, put the lid on, go take my shower. Don't have to watch them or anything. They're done, you know, in a half hour. And so it just speeds things up a little bit. So this is 2 cups of dry lentils cooked. So we're getting like lots more than 2 cups of lentils out of it. They're going to like double in size. You guys familiar with lentils? Do you ever cook with lentils? Great, great food. They're a legume. We need to eat more legumes, beans, peas, and lentils. Super high in fiber. Fiber draws fats out of the body, drives compound, like unwanted toxins and other compounds out of the body, estrogens and hormones, things that we want to get out of our body, fats, if we want to remove fats from our body. Beans help increase fat burning after a meal and reduce fat storage after a meal. People that eat beans, peas, and lentils a lot have been shown to have thinner waists, thinner waistlines. They decrease your desire for sweets. They stabilize blood sugar. Good way to feed your gut. Okay, we experience that gut health thing if we haven't eaten beans very much in our life, and we go have beans and oh, I can't eat beans. They bother my gut. They give me gas. Well, the reason they do that is because you haven't eaten enough of them. You need to eat more of them. And even if you just have a tablespoon a day with your salad or your soup or whatever, and gradually build up, because your gut, those microflora that we take probiotics for to help build, we need to eat more beans. That'll help build those good bugs in your gut. A lot of talk about gut health, you know, and how it relates to all disease and sickness. That's, if you want to have a good gut, make a good gut garden down there with lots of veggies. Okay, this soup is really, really thick, and so we're going to just water it down, although we need to cook our spinach, so we better put that in. So we're putting 3 cups of spinach, and my cups are like handfuls. So if it calls for 3 cups of greens, I do 3 handfuls. And I chopped the spinach. This is just baby spinach from Costco. And we don't want to go too heavy on the greens. We don't want, and I do, did I say I chopped them? I chopped them. Because the last thing I want to do when I'm eating a soup, or really anything, is to spoon up and have this long thing of green. You know, I like to chop them up fine. Spinach is a great source of protein. Popeye knew. You guys, remember Popeye? Good source of protein, good source of phytochemicals. And by the way, I have a protein handout over there. It's the green sheet. I hope you'll get one, and I hope you'll look at it, and I hope you'll forget about protein. Please forget about protein. That is like the #1 biggest concern with people these days. And there's no concern. Protein is in everything. We don't have to worry about protein. What we need to get is amino acids, and all amino acids come from the ground. There's protein, if you'll see in that handout that there's protein in everything we eat. There's protein in a banana. There's protein in an apple. There's protein in spinach. Of course, beans and nuts. We don't have to focus on beans and nuts and combine them with grains to get the right protein combination. Forget all that. Forget about protein. Don't worry about it. Throw out your protein powders. Just eat food, and you'll have plenty of protein. I promise. Oh, the cow, you know. The cow, where does he get its, where does the cow get the protein that where's the horse get their protein? Where does the elephant get their protein? What about the giraffe? These huge animals, where do they get their protein? They don't have a steak every night. They eat greens. And by the way, I'm not preaching vegan or vegetarian or raw foodism or anything like that. I'm just preaching lots of good, healthy food. Whatever avenue you take as far as that goes, I just encourage people to get as much plant foods and much greens and healthy things like this in as much as they can. It's about abundance. Okay, so let's see. Oh, we got to get our peas in our pot pie and hopefully not burn. Okay, we're going to turn that right off because I'm going to go ahead and put the peas in here. Oh, Jan, will you put those in the freezer? Did you get enough? Cool. Huh? No. Okay, so let's see. Let me make sure I've got everything in there, and I do. So we're just going to set that off to the side. Oh, I forget these. See, I don't have gas in my house, and I forget how hot it gets my handles. Yes, I am. Okay, we're going to let this soup go ahead and finish cooking down that broccoli, and then it'll be ready to serve. We're going to serve that soup up first because that pot pie's got to go in the oven for 15 minutes. We're going to make the sauce to go over our pot pie. So when you have a vegetable pot pie or any kind of pot pie, it's got a creamy sauce on it, right? So we're going to make that creamy sauce with cauliflower. Do you guys ever blend cauliflower? It's my favorite thing to do. So you can use cauliflower as a substitute for cream sauces in any kind of creamy soup that you make. In fact, I encourage you to throw out your cream and your butter and get a head of cauliflower. Lots more nutrients, lots of fiber, lots of phytochemicals, lots of disease-promoting properties, unlike cream and butter. I'm going to put part of this cauliflower in here. Okay, so now the kind of cauliflower that I'm using that I love when I'm blending, because I don't have to take it off the head, is this cauliflower rice. I get it at Costco. There's like 4 bags in here, and I just steamed up 2. So I'm doing 1.5 the recipe for the pot pie, and so 2 bags is about 1.5 heads of cauliflower, I figure. So anyway, and I just got that steamed, and to this I'm going to add. I want to make sure. Let's see, those cashews are for, oh, I know what that's for. Okay, we're going to add some sunflower seeds. These are going to add some nice fats, some healthy fats, whole food fats, okay? The fats are bound to the fibers in the seeds, so this is all healthy for you. And then we're going to put in some no chicken style seasoning, and this recipe is on the back of your recipe sheet. It's a nutritional yeast based sauce or seasoning, and it just gives it kind of a nice chicken flavor. Okay, so and that's it. We're going to go ahead and grind that up. I'm gonna wait till I get this in the oven to serve up the soup. So. That's looking good. Oh. And I'm gonna have to roll out my dough on that side, so if you want to get that cutting board, just wipe off that counter. Okay. Ooh. Yes, please. And what spoon?
Oh, which spoon? I'm grabbing that.
Okay, thanks. Okay, so we're just gonna, we want to have that fairly thick because we can always thin it down if we need to. And it's going right into this pot pie stuff. And another reason why I like to have it fairly thick is so that I can do this without too much of an issue, because we got some leftover grub there in the lid, and this will just kind of clean things out and we won't waste anything. Oh, that still didn't get that off the lid. Whoops. So you can do a soup, creamy cauliflower soup. So you can just do the creamy cauliflower. You could even use that no chicken style seasoning. Put in some carrots and celery and onion, saute that up and pour this creamy cauliflower stuff over it. Add some potato. You could do, I do a chickpea chowder with a cauliflower base. Let's see, what else? Oh, gravy, a chicken style gravy for like Thanksgiving for mashed potatoes. So good. If either of you, I don't know if you guys came to my holiday class that I did a few months ago, but I think I did mashed potatoes. And this is what I pour into the potatoes instead of cream and butter. In fact, it's half cauliflower and half potatoes. I need to thin that down just a little bit more, so we're going to go ahead and run that again.
That bag of cauliflower you showed, is it called cauliflower rice?
Yes.
Rice and
No. Cauliflower rice is just cauliflower that's been chopped up so it's like rice. Yeah. It's kind of for those people that are afraid of grains. They want to use cauliflower instead of, it's a paleo thing, I think. Another thing, grains are amazing foods and we need grains. Eat grains. We've been eating grains for thousands of years. Grains are good for us. Okay, we're gonna just stir that soup. And that is done. That burner can go off. In fact, it's too hot now. I don't know if the camera guy can get a close-up of that soup, but it's looking so pretty with the red and the green, or I mean the orange and the green and the red. There's that red bell pepper in there too that looks really nice. Okay, back to our pot pie. All right, so what we're gonna do here is get our pan. Actually, maybe we'll wait till we do we'll do our dough first, our crust. Do you have my blender jar? Oh, it's right here. Actually, will you rinse that out for me real quick?
Don't forget about the one we need to make with rice.
Huh?
Don't forget about the one dinner we need to make with rice.
Yes, thank you. Okay, so we're gonna do our crust for the pot pie. And what I've got in here is some whole wheat flour. This is white wheat, and it's just recently ground, so it's real fresh. And I've sifted it too. And we're doing 1.5 of this recipe. So anyway, I'm gonna put in our seasonings, which is, not our seasonings, we're gonna put some baking powder and salt in here. Just mix that around. And then we need to make some milk or cream to go into this, and cream and butter. And that's what we're gonna do with our cashews. Cashews make a great substitute for cream or butter or anything. Anybody ever use cashew butter? Yeah, it works great. So we're just gonna blend that up when I get my blender here. You're all right. And I'm gonna roll this dough out in some parchment paper because it's gonna make it lots. I didn't even check to see if they have a rolling pin here. I'm sure they do. Because we want to make sure, we don't want to get our dough too dry. We want it a little bit sticky, if anything. So I roll it between 2 pieces of parchment paper.
Let's see.
Here, you can look for a blender for me. Do you have the lid for that as well? Okay, so I'm going to put into our blender jar 3/4 a cup of cashews. It was just a 1/2 cup with your recipe, but we're doing 1.5. And then we need to put in some water. How much water do we need? We need 3/4 and 1/2. So where's my... Let's see, what's 1/2 of 3/4?
1 1/8.
1 1/8. Thank you.
That's like a math thing.
Yeah, that is. Let's see. 1. I can't even see. 1 1/4. Let's see. Yeah, that's 1 1/4. I need to get just a little bit rid of just a little bit of that. Okay. All right. And that's it. Just those cashews and water. We're just making our cream. Okay, I'm going to move this over here. And we're just going to put that in there. Now I'm going to be careful about. Sometimes when you double it, things turn out a little different, but I think that's going to be just about right. And I actually didn't quite double the flour just to make sure, because you can always add, can't take away. It's hard to add water after you already have it all mixed in and you realize it's too dry. So is it, we just have one person that's not doing the gluten thing? Anybody else? Just one? Okay. And wheat is good for people. You know, there's a big, gluten-free craze going on. And if you're seriously sensitive, 1% of the population is celiac. I think it's actually less than that. And then there are others, a small percentage, who are sensitive to wheat. And of course you want to stay away from it. But if you're not, if you think you can eat it, gluten is good. Gluten is wheat protein. And we love protein, right? And so, why get rid of gluten if, it's a great protein. And wheat's a really nutritious grain too, if we can eat it. So, okay, that's feeling really good. So we're just going to mix this in just like we do regular dough. That's feeling really good. I don't think we're going to need to add any more to that. And I've made cookies out of this same concept, sugar cookies. Sugar cookies. Date sugar cookies. The dates sweeten it, and then I use cashews to make the butter part of it, where you roll them out and cookie cutter them. The dates make them a little bit dark, the color on them, so I just put a little jam on the top of them, or you could do a little frosting if you wanted, but I'm kind of a purist, so. Okay, so we want to make this the shape of that pan, so we'll see how good I am. This parchment paper works really good for rolling out dough. At Christmas time, I made this pot pie, and I got a cookie cutter and cut out little Christmas trees and laid them across on top of the pie, which was really cute. Get my knife over there, by the way, by chance. Thank you. Okay, because I'm a little bit, I'm kind of a perfectionist, I guess you could say. So I'm going to do this just to kind of square off the ends. And then just roll that in. And you could probably do I'm sure you could do a gluten-free crust if you knew how to do gluten-free bread. I've never worked with gluten-free flours before. And then since you've got this parchment paper, since you're working with it, it's a little bit easier just to lay this on top of your pie, which is really pretty close to being about perfect. So we're just going to dump our pot pie ingredients into the pan. Okay, yummy, yummy. Hey Jan, will you get that kale going? Just dump the kale into this pot. We're gonna get the kale going just so it starts cooking. I've got some chopped kale. We're doing this Indian spice kale with chickpeas. Kale is my favorite food. I eat it all the time. Yeah, and yeah, we'll put some water in there too. So I've went ahead and chopped this up really fine, and I've put in some of the stalk with it. So I've rinsed the leaves, chopped it, and I go down into the stalk a little bit because I like to use that stalk. It's good.
You can see the pieces right there.
Yeah. So I'm just going to go ahead and let Jan get that started because we want to make sure that gets done. It cooks pretty quick. And you can put in about like 3/4 cup of water. Okay, and then we're just going to take our crust and hopefully get it right on the pot pie. Oh, beautiful. That couldn't have turned out any better. And then I'm going to get a fork. And just do our little fancy thing right there, like so. Just like Grandma. Okay, that's going to go in the oven for 15 minutes at 350 degrees. Thank you. Parchment paper, my best friend next to my chopper. You don't ever have to use oil on like a cookie sheet or cookies or anything. It's such easy cleanup, so much easier. How do you get little kids to do what? Eat their veggies. You hide them in things like this pot pie. My grandkids, this is one thing that they'll eat is this pot pie. Of course, they're not hidden in that. You can, it's obvious that they're in there. But would they eat a pot pie, something like that, do you think? I can't. Oh, well, but she won't eat the vegetables. Maybe if they're separated. Kids are tough. I don't think I have any answers for that because I try to feed my grandkids. About the only thing they'll eat is Mexican food. They do like the pot pie and, you know, Mexican food when, you know, I do beans and tortillas and all that kind of thing. So, okay, let's see. I'm going to grab another spoon. So I think while we're going to just bring the kale to a boil. By the way, greens are super high in calcium as well. Well, not super high, but they're a good source of calcium. In fact, you absorb more calcium from greens than you do from milk. So again, we go back to the cow. What does the cow get to get its calcium? It eats greens, and that's how it gets calcium. Countries that drink the most milk and eat the most dairy products have the highest rates of osteoporosis. It's a big marketing scheme by the dairy industry. Sorry if you came from dairy farmers, but the word's getting out that milk's not such a good thing. In fact, the commercials, the milk industry, they cannot put out a advertisement that says milk. Some of you probably remember the commercials, milk, it does the body good. They can't do that anymore because they can't prove it. It doesn't do a body good. It causes a lot of increases hormonal cancers. A good way to grow breast cancer is drink lots of milk and eat dairy products. Same with prostate cancer, same with ovarian cancer, your hormonal cancers. When they milk that cow, she's supercharged with hormones, right? She just had a baby. And this is the lactation secretions for that baby cow to grow from 60 pounds to 600 pounds or 1,000 pounds in a very short amount of time. That's a lot of calcium, a lot of protein, a lot of growth hormones. We don't want that growth hormone in our body stimulating growth when we have cancer. If you know anybody with cancer, tell them to ditch the dairy. And there's all kinds of information online about that. That's pretty much, that information's out there pretty readily these days. Okay, so I'm going to add to my kale some garlic. Did I mention that I really love kale? I really love kale. And I love it steamed. Most people, they'll say, oh, I don't like kale. And I'll say, have you ever eaten it cooked? Well, no, I've done kale chips and I put kale in my smoothies, but it's so bitter. I'm like, you gotta cook it. And you know what? The more you cook it, the more it stimulates your immune system, increases your immune system. Another nutritionfacts.org video. They did some tests on that. It had more immune stimulating properties when it was cooked. And it was like boiled for like 10 minutes and it still had these properties. So cook it. It's got a wonderful, wonderful savory, salty flavor. I mean, if I do, what I love to do is, what we're gonna do tonight is put some beans in with it. But I love just doing steaming some kale and mixing in some rice and pouring that cauliflower cream over it. And I don't have to add any salt because that kale is it's salty. It's really good. Okay, so we're just gonna let that cook for now. And maybe we'll put in our seasonings, our Indian spiced seasonings, which I think is right here. We've got a teaspoon of coriander, a teaspoon of cumin, and a 1/4 teaspoon of garam masala, which is an Indian type spice. Going to sprinkle that on top and just leave it there for now. And this is a super quick and easy dish. This soup is pretty easy, quick and easy, especially if you have your lentils already cooked and even your sweet potato already cooked. You can have this out, within a half hour. The pot pie, of course, is a little bit more of a lengthy recipe, but honestly, you could make the inner part. And I didn't leave any inner part out without the crust. We can take the crust off. We can pull off the crust. I'm so sorry. You can pull off we'll pull off the crust. Of course, if
My grandson is allergic.
oh, good grief! After all that, I forget. Okay, we're gonna serve this. We're gonna serve up this soup and get you guys going on that. So, in fact, I'll serve it if you wanna take it out too. Oh, you already counted. Okay.
You want to do this? Use a scooper.
Oh, you got a scooper. You are on the ball. Let's see. Let's get rid of that. Okay. Let's see. 2. 3. Oh, you know what I didn't do? I got to put in some salt. Haven't put in any salt yet. Got to do that. I do use salt. Okay, so we're going to do about a teaspoon of salt, and I'm just going to, actually about a teaspoon and a half. Ooh, okay, there we go. Those tomatoes were not salted, so there wasn't any kind of salt in this at all. And I use the real salt, Redmond real salt. By the way, salt is salt. It's all sodium chloride. It all will raise blood pressure if you eat too much of it. And it also will increase risk of osteoporosis if you eat too much of it. So it's good to reduce the amount of salt that you're consuming. As much as you can. I find I can't go out to a restaurant anymore because so salty. I end up, the next morning, my rings are tight, my eyes are puffy. Whoops. You're right.
Flash.
And I'll have Jan bring this out to you so you can. And I think it's still pretty hot, so be careful. Oh, I didn't set that timer. Did she set that timer? Oh.
17 hours.
Thank you. I'm glad somebody's keeping me straight here. I get going and I forget what I'm doing. And when you combine these foods, all these wonderful, colorful foods, you're creating this synergistic effect. I mean, there's great nutrients in just carrots and just red bell pepper and just spinach, but when you combine them, you're like, you know, they're working together and creating more processes in your body. So it's that synergistic effect. In fact, my favorite doctor, one of my favorite doctors, Dr. Joel Fuhrman, he's a board-certified family physician from New Jersey, and he teaches his nutritarian diet style, which is a high-nutrient diet style. He compares it to a symphony compared to just listening to the violin or just listening to a flute or whatever, just individual instruments. You know, they sound great by themselves, but when you put them together in a symphony, wow. Let's see. Oh, glad you thought about our cameraman, because I told him he could have some food.
Good.
So are we good as far as food?
Everybody got one, right?
Anybody? No? Okay. We're going to jump over here to our kale and make sure it's our water's just about gone, so we'll go ahead and add a little bit more water. Oh. Did you turn that rice on?
I did, because
Oh, okay.
I got off it, but now that's on pretty high. Well, you don't need it now.
Yeah, we don't. Well, we'll still give her some, because we'll serve.
Okay.
We'll just take the crust off and put it on top. We're gonna let that go a little bit. How's the soup? Good. Good. I'm glad.
Such a good trick on the less water and making it cook faster, because I always think, oh, soup, well, I'm going to need at least an hour.
Yeah. Yeah. Just use.
Especially with sweet potatoes.
Mm-hmm.
I thought, oh, you got a long time. These are really nicely done.
What?
These are very nicely done, the
Thank you.
sweet potatoes.
Thank you. Yeah. I love the sweet potatoes. And again, they're so, sweet potatoes are so good for you, and they're good this time of year. And okay, so to our kale dish, we're going to also add, besides our chickpeas, we're going to add some pumpkin seeds. And this is a common thing that I do with any kind of green. When I'm cooking greens, I like to put some kind of fat with them. And my favorite thing is to cook up some kale and get some avocado and mash it up and mix it in. So amazing. It's better than butter. Or you can also do seeds. Seeds are super high protein, they're high in minerals, they're high in lignans. Flax seeds are actually the highest source of lignans, and lignans convert to phytoestrogens in the body. And phytoestrogens are good. They're in soy products as well, and soy is good, by the way. But those phytoestrogens bind to estrogen receptors in your body and decrease the amount of the harmful estrogens that your body produces that increases risk of cancer. So when we're getting phytoestrogens, and phytoestrogens are in all plant foods. They're just more abundant in like soy and like seeds. Seeds are high in them, flax seeds especially. Anyway, that's one thing that's really good about seeds. Seeds are higher in protein than nuts. Seeds are higher in minerals than nuts. Seeds are just a better overall food than nuts. So if you're, when you're using nuts and seeds, if you're wanting to decide what to use, the seeds are your better option. So, but what I'm going to do is you can put these in whole if you want, but I like to grind them up a little bit, and that disperses the fats and the oils throughout the kale dish or whatever greens you're putting them on. And you can steam any kind of greens. Your broccoli, sprinkle on some ground seeds on top of it. So good. Dr. Fuhrman has a acronym, G-BOMBS, and it's the most powerful anti-disease, anti-cancer foods. In fact, I've got a flyer on it. Greens, beans, onions, mushrooms, berries, and seeds. Those are the greens, beans, onions, mushrooms, berries, seeds. Those are the 6 most powerful anti-cancer foods, and I would say most anti-disease foods. He encourages people to get them in every day, and if you can get them in a combination, that's giving you a super, super high nutrient punch. So a lot of my dishes that I do, I've got the G-BOMBS in, minus the berries. I don't put berries in my soup, but like this one right here, it's got greens, beans, onions, mushrooms, and no seeds, but you could sprinkle some seeds on top if you were really, wanted to get all of them. But we're having seeds in our kale, so that's going to complete it. Anyway, we're just going to grind those up in a coffee grinder. This is how I used to make when I was trying to get rid of sugar. Sugar was my hardest thing. I love sweets. And so when I changed to a plant-based diet and was trying to get healthier and get off sugar, it took me years to get away from sugar. But one of the things that I would do is grind up almonds in a coffee grinder and pour it in a bowl and get a little honey or maple syrup. Actually, I think it was maple syrup. And drizzle that in there and then stir it in. And that was I would just eat, I hadn't discovered dates yet. So that was how I got my treat. But that was so good. And you mix in some cocoa powder or some carob powder and make kind of a chocolate little candy, kind of like we did tonight. But that's just a great way to get some good treats in. So we're going to just check the kale again. We want to make sure that's nice and tender. And I think we might need just a little bit more water. I may have you kind of taste that kale, Jan, if you would. I've got the spices in it and I can't do cumin, so. It should be pretty close. Is it tender? Nice and tender, is it? Okay, good. So we want to cook those greens till they're nice and tender, but not to where they're that ugly kind of, when you cook olive green, when you cook your greens too long, you don't want to get them like that. I don't know if the cameraman's got this kale, but you can see how just bright green this is, and it's just really in a really good place. So we're going to go ahead and add our chickpeas to this, and this is about 2.5 cups. I cook my beans from scratch. If you don't want to do that, don't worry about it. But it's super, super easy, and I've learned that after I use my own cooked beans and I go back and have a can of beans, again, kind of like the tomatoes, they taste like the can. So I like to do my beans from scratch. And it's super, super easy. I mean, it really takes no time at all. It's just a matter of planning ahead, again. And I just take my beans, I put them in a bowl, cover them with water, and I leave them for 24 hours. After 24 hours, they get this bubbly on top, and you can let them soak for 8 hours. 8 hours is enough, but the longer you let them soak, the more bubbly you get, and that bubbly is part of the gas problem. So you dump that down the drain, and then you cover them with water in your crock pot or your Instapot if you've got one. In fact, if you have an Instapot, you don't even have to soak them. I put them in my crock pot and cook them for 8 hours while I'm sleeping or while I'm at work. Again, takes no time at all. I don't have to watch them. And when I get home from work, they're done and ready to go. I put them in little containers, square containers. I use glass actually to freeze them in. I put them in containers and they stack nice in my freezer. Then I just have to remember to take them out ahead of time to thaw them for whatever I'm making. But anyway, they're super, super easy to do. And again, we need to get more beans into our diet. In fact, I like to sing the song, beans, beans, the magical fruit. The more you eat, the healthier you are. So the blue zones are the healthiest populations in the world. They live to be over 100. They don't just live, but they thrive. They're out gardening and playing with their grandkids and doing all sorts of things. They're very active, and their common food is a plant-based diet. Like Okinawans are like 96% plant-based. They eat a little bit of fish, and I think maybe a little bit of goat milk or something. But they're lots and lots of plant foods. That's how all the blue zones are. Loma Linda is one of them. They're vegetarian, Seventh-day Adventist. Okinawa, Japan, Sardinia, Italy, Icaria, Greece, and there's another one somewhere. I can't remember what it was. But anyway, and they eat a plant-based diet, and their common protein source is beans. That's their common food in all 5 of those zones. They all eat beans. Chickpeas, lentils, black beans in Costa Rica. So if those longest lived populations are eating it, then they're a good thing. Okay, we're going to put in a little bit of salt, even though we don't really need much salt, but we're adding some beans, and I am going to put a little bit of rice in here with this because I'm not really doubling the beans too much. I need to add a little bit more because I've doubled this recipe. So when I'm doing just kale, I can get away with no salt, but usually when I'm adding lots of beans and rice, And on your recipe, rice isn't listed in the ingredients, but I have down there serve either by itself or with a little bit of rice, and I am going to turn in a little bit of rice. Holy moly. That. So yeah, I'm glad I have this actually, but we'll give her a little bit of that. One of my favorite things to make is kale and black bean tacos. And I do this thing right here, except I put black beans in it, and instead of the pumpkin seeds, I put avocado. I stir mashed avocado into it, and instead of the seasonings I put in like a Mexican seasoning. And put that in a corn tortilla, and oh my goodness. So good. Okay, we need to put in our pumpkin seeds. We'll go ahead and put them all in there. What the heck? Pumpkin seeds are high in zinc and iron. And when you mix that, if you have some citrus fruit with it, of some sort, some lemon or lime or something, you increase the absorption of that iron and zinc. So if you're low in iron, you want to get some more greens and add some seeds, pumpkin seeds. All right, that's done and good. And we're going to go ahead and serve that up along with our pot pie, which will be done. It should be done. How'd you like the kale? The Indian spice kale? Not bad, huh, for kale? I love those Indian spices, and then mix it with the chickpeas. Anyway, you know, what you do is you don't go home and say, honey, guess what? You don't say a word. Class was great, or I hated it, or whatever. And if you liked it, class was great, I learned some great things, that's all. And then the next night, you go and you make dinner, and you try something like this. Maybe the lentil soup, maybe just put a little bit of ground beef in it or a little chicken or whatever, and don't, you know, just make it so he's not wondering. And the next time leave it out or whatever. You know, like I say, I'm not promoting vegetarian or anything, but just decrease the amount of animal products you're using. And just do a lentil soup without anything in it and see, you know, and if he's like, well, where's the meat? Well, oh, I just found this recipe online. It just sounded really good. You know, don't go announcing that we're gonna get healthier, because nobody wants to hear that, especially our husbands, except hers. So anyway, again, you're welcome. So glad to have you guys here tonight. Hope I see you again.